This is not designed to be a conversation. This is designed so, very much like at a board meeting, you can share your concerns, your thoughts with us. Mrs. Dietrich, our public information officer, is going to call you up in the order that you signed up. If you could stay to around 3 minutes, that would be great, because there are 30 of you here who have signed up to talk, and we would love to be able to, in the 90 minutes, have all of you have the opportunity to address us. So you know this is being recorded. This event will be transcribed, and that transcript will be available, and it will also be summarized. So at the end of this process, anyone who's interested will be able to read what was said in all 3 of the meetings and get individual summaries and a complete summary that we will all take into account as we look to move this process forward. So Cassie, if you want to invite our first speaker up, and she'll just kind of give you a thumbs up when you get to around 3 minutes.
Amanda White.
Hello, my name is Amanda White. I live in Bristol Commons. I have 3 students, an 8th grader, a 6th grader, and a 2nd grader. We purchased our home in 2013 and have been affected by the last 2 redistricting changes. Our boys started at Wyandotte and were moved to Bailey in 2020 during the pandemic. This year, 30% of their classmates were moved to Carr Middle School. Now, my 8th grader is facing a move to Scioto with 60-ish kids from Bailey, splitting their elementary school into all 3 high schools. These Bailey kids are the only part of Roselle to potentially be carved out to Scioto. Out of the 60 Bailey kids, only 5 other 8th graders live in our neighborhood. If DCS were to choose map 3, Bailey class of 2030 would enter high school knowing 3% of their peers in a school of 1,800 students. Map 1 for Dublin sets the district up for future growth. Map 1 utilizes clear feeder patterns, moving the majority of 1 middle school cells to Scioto, giving these students a large group of friends as they transition to a new high school. The 19% that stays at the Kaufman are happy about staying. If this is still an unsatisfactory move the entirety of cells, joining Davis to populate Scioto 50-50. Map 1 keeps all 4 elementary schools that make up cells together. Dr. M, you mentioned your goal for a 6th middle school in the near future. Map 1 would set this district up for that future change without DCS needing to redraw all of the middle school and high school lines. Choosing any other map will continue to pass the buck down the road to the next family, likely still mine and the Bailey community, as we continually take the brunt of every change. Map 1 keeps travel times to a minimum. The southern Dublin neighborhoods only increase their drive by 2 minutes. There are 3 bridges they can access: Hayden Run, Bridge Street, and Emerald Parkway. If it is safe enough for Old Dublin students to access both the Bridge Street and Emerald Parkway Bridge, why then would it become unsafe for the southern Dublin neighborhoods who also have an additional bridge? Bristol Commons and the Bailey community are walkable, bikeable to Kaufman. Families like mine chose this location so our children could go to and from school easily for sports and after-school activities. Per your traffic study, it takes 4 minutes to get from Bristol Commons Park to Kaufman. Only 4 minutes. Map 1 for Dublin keeps safer, shorter commutes, ensures stronger future growth in feeder patterns, safeguards mental health by moving an entire middle school cells to Scioto. Thank you for listening.
Dana Berger.
Hello, my name is Dana Berger. My family currently lives in Bristol Commons, but that is not where we started in this district. Our first house was in Brookside Woods, which went to Davis and Scioto. Our wonderful neighborhood was often used to help balance socioeconomics in the elementary schools. I didn't realize how this would impact us until my oldest child started school. Brookside Wood kids were bused to Daniel Wright Elementary. Out of the 4 closest elementary to us at that time, that was the furthest from us. Hopewell had not been built yet. We were far from all of her school friends and the school community. She could not ride her bike to friends' houses. Getting her to a friend's house for a play date wasn't always easy. Picking her up after latchkey and then getting home was met with traffic issues because we were not close to school. It was frustrating to not be near other neighborhoods that also went to that school. We felt isolated. Our reasons for moving out of that neighborhood were to have better connections with the neighborhoods closest to us. Access to the bike paths in Dublin, bike riding or walking distance to a pool, and closer proximities to schools so that kids could potentially ride their bikes for activities. My husband and I both work outside the home. We need our kids to be able to get themselves to friends' houses and activities. We did not move to get away from Scioto. We loved Brookside Woods, but we knew that our family needed a better connected neighborhood. We did consider houses in Wyandotte Woods, which is close to Scioto bike paths and Lifetime Fitness. When we moved to Bristol Commons, we were excited to be surrounded by neighborhoods that also went to the same schools and to be close to elementary schools, either Bailey or Wyandotte and Kaufman. It has made things much easier for my kids, not just for growing friendships, but also for carpooling and helping out other families. We will lose that connection to the high school community if Draft 3 is chosen and we are sent to Scioto. Students getting together to study, work on projects, connect with teammates, etc. will be more difficult. Students in Bristol Commons can currently ride their bikes safely to Kaufman. They cannot ride safely to Scioto. Families in Bristol Commons rely on their kids being able to bike to Kaufman for certain activities. If a neighborhood can currently safely ride their bikes to a high school, then they need to stay at that high school as families rely on that aspect of their neighborhood. Draft 3 buses kids to Kaufman who can currently walk or ride to Jerome. This does not meet the proximity criteria and unnecessarily adds more traffic to Brand Road. In particular, as a band parent, I know that marching band students have required practices in the summer, and I witnessed multiple freshman band members riding their bikes from Bristol Commons to Kaufman over the summer. Proximity to the high schools is an extremely important factor for many families. Out of the 3 high schools, Scioto is the furthest from us. I would not care about going to Scioto if it made sense, if it were closer, and I would not be driving past other neighborhoods who are closer to the bridge than us, i.e. Coventry Woods and Kilauea. I would have felt the same way if we had been told we were going to Jerome while we lived in Brookside Woods. It just does not make sense. Moving neighborhoods away from their closest high school does not fix socioeconomic differences within the districts. If the leaders of the district have evidence that it can help, then Jerome neighborhoods need to be included in this process as well. The Jerome community seems to be immune to be moved for socioeconomic purposes. Can we find other solutions to this issue so that families are not disrupted more than they already will be? In addition, traffic. If Jerome students, current Jerome students from Bishop's Run and Westbury are going eastbound on Brand Road, it will be nearly impossible for parents, students, buses leaving Bristol Commons and Brandon to turn left onto Brand Road to get to Scioto. There's no traffic light, there's no roundabout there, it will be very difficult. There is one good bridge for us to cross the river, and that is Emerald Parkway. That is the only one. Otherwise, we're going up to Blick Road, which is out of the way, and then has only one lane going each way. That is all I have. Thank you.
Jeff Dibert.
Good morning, everybody. Wanted to take a moment to talk about issues with future growth. Applies to all of Dublin, no specific neighborhoods here. So map 3 redistricts the fewest students from Jerome, leaving 111% utilization in 10 years. Matt Cropper estimated redistricting would be needed again in about 5 years. A suggested solution to the longevity issue was to leave Kaufman underutilized and spot redistrict students in when Jerome or Scioto overgrew capacity. So part of Kaufman was redistricted for this purpose. So what part of Jerome is going to spot redistrict to Kaufman? Well, it's not going to be Grizel. That's not an option because in map 3, Grizel is no longer a Kaufman feeder. The small portion of Bailey Elementary students that get redistricted to Scioto turn Grizel into a Scioto Jerome feeder. redistricting of any Muirfield to Kaufman would split Brazil 3 ways, which we were trying to avoid before. Eversole Run is the only other option, and it's 100% Jerome feeder. Parts can be redistricted to Kaufman, but logistics are terrible with these students driving through Brazil's district, which is closer to Kaufman. So another cool option. So Jerome High School is in the west half of Brazil. So this is also not a good option to say. If Brazil can't go to Sayota, then can't go to Kaufman, then Sayota is the only option. But west half of Brazil is not an option there. So the east half of Brazil, Muirfield, is too large to move to Sayota as one neighborhood. Breaking it up could be an option. Redistricting a portion of Penny, similar to what was done with Bailey, would provide some relief. I'm not advocating for that. I think that's a terrible idea. I'm sure someone is thinking middle school redistricting can also solve the problem. Well, you can redraw the middle school lines any way you want it, but you're not going to change the fact that Kaufman nor Sayota have the capacity for all of Muirfield, or parts of it, with middle school redistricting alone. There's a chance that Penny could redistrict to Sayota, or Deer Run to Kaufman after school middle school redistricting, but that's as bad of an idea as splitting a Bailey in regard to damaging communities. You're going to split right through the middle of Muirfield. There are no options to spot redistrict Jerome in the years to come because of the combination of Muirfield being too large to spot redistrict and the complication of Gazelle being a Jerome Sayota feeder. So there's no way around it. A new high school plan would be required as soon as Jerome expands past capacity. A new high school won't be built by then, so we'll have to redo high schools and build new elementary schools, redistrict elementary schools, build middle schools, then redistrict middle schools, then redo the high schools again to align with those. Map 1 allows support of Eversole through Penny, Sells through Thomas, or Indian Run to redistrict to Kaufman in the future without feeder complications. This compensates for the growth of both Jerome or Sayota. If the growth in Sayota is predicted, then modify Map 1 to keep more of Sells at Kaufman now. There's no need to redistrict them, to just move them back here in a little while. If you do select Map 3, consider this. Since there are no good options to redistrict students back to Kaufman, leave the Bailey Elementary students at Kaufman. Don't redistrict them. Leave them at Kaufman to satisfy 7 of the 8 criteria and reconsider redistricting them when all the other high schools need to begin in 5 years. Thank you very much.
Mike Skalak.
Hello, good morning. My name is Mike Skalak. I'm here representing the Old Dublin neighborhoods. We've heard a lot of talk about that already. I'm sure you on the board, Dr. Barthausen. Sorry for your inboxes. Apologies for having everybody send those emails all the time. I put a face with the name here. I'm Mike. That's the guy who sent them here. I'm here to tell you one thing. No map is complete without Old Dublin at Kaufman High School. Old Dublin has planning blocks of only 94 students. These 94 students make no material change to any high school based on diversity, utilization, and growth accommodation. It's a small group of students with an economically diverse background, and we bring zero change, positively or negatively, to any of the scores that you have. However, these 94 students adversely affect your scoring on proximity, feeder patterns, transportation efficiency, and safety if the Old Dublin neighborhoods get redistricted to Sayota High School. I'm going to leave you with these 4 points to remember. In proximity, our closest student housing is only 0.7 miles away from Kaufman High School today. You can hear the marching band on Friday nights from our neighborhood. And the city of Dublin has created Old Dublin as a central urban walking core, meaning that people want access to work, entertainment, necessities, and education, making this area walkable to Indian Run, Sells, and Kaufman High School. For feeder pattern, last year 17% of students from Carr Middle School were redistricted to Sells Middle School to keep the Indian Run feeder pattern intact. Map 1 moves only those students from Sells back to Kaufman. On Map 3, the 94 students from Old Dublin are part of a very small minority of students that get moved to Scioto. Neither of these scenarios keeps the original intent from last year's redistricting to keep the Indian Run to Sells to Kaufman feeder. Now, in transportation efficiency, we're going to hear from everybody here that their neighborhood and travel routes have the absolute worst standstill, hard to navigate, Mad Max gridlock traffic. And I'm here to tell you the same thing. It's actually my neighborhood that has that. But don't take my word for it. City of Dublin tweeted out on Monday, which moves slower on International Sloth Day edition? Our Slow Down Dublin Sloth or Bridge Street traffic at 5 p.m.? As for safety, the district and Cropper GIS have said that minimizing the number of students who need to cross major intersections and other barriers need to be maximized to safety and security of students. We all want our students to have safe access to the schools. Well, according to ODOT and the City of Dublin Police Department data, traveling through Bridge Street is 2.6 to 10 times more likely to have a traffic incident along that route compared to other Scioto River crossings. Avoiding Bridge Street and the Riverside Roundabout is essential to maintaining student transportation safety. In conclusion, Old Dublin belongs to Kaufman. It's a practical solution. Let's keep them, the core of Dublin, where it's always belonged, at Kaufman High School. Thank you.
Nick Byers.
Good morning. Thank you, Chris and Diana, Dr. Ed, for taking some time this morning to hear from our community. Appreciate the time and the effort, the stress level that's poured into this process, not only by you, but our in your teams, but by our fellow community members and our neighbors. Let's just say that when it's all said and done, that this process is probably shaved a good 1 to 2 years off of everybody's lives. And when it's all said and done, we'll be excited to get back to our day jobs. My name is Nick Byers, and I'm representing Waterford Village in the broader neighborhood of Old Dublin. And I'm here just to reinforce the message that Mike just said there, and be consistent with the message that we've been clear with, is that no map is complete without Old Dublin at Kaufman. You know, we've lived in that neighborhood in Old Dublin for 15 years. I remember walking down Waterford Drive to Monterey with my wife when she was pregnant, envisioning our kids walking with their friends right down the street to elementary, middle, and eventually high school. As a matter of fact, when we bought our second home in Old Dublin, we really didn't like it at all. But we did love the neighborhood, right? And we loved the idea of our children growing up and being a mile or less to all the schools they attend. Indian Run Elementary and Sells Middle School are two of the three closest schools to Kaufman in the city of Dublin. Old Dublin neighborhoods have fed into Kaufman for 52 years, and our hope is to keep our kids together from kindergarten all the way to Kaufman. Keeping our 94 students together from Old Dublin at Kaufman aligns with the DCS redistricting goals, causing unnecessary disruption. It maintains balance across redistricting criteria. It keeps students together close to school for stability. It reduces transportation risks with walkable and bikeable access. Overall, the pros outweigh the cons, and keeping Old Dublin students at Kaufman High School is a win-win for the overall plan and for the 94 students of Old Dublin. At the end of the day, the men and women that you've heard from and will hear from today and moving forward from Waterford Village and in the Old Dublin neighborhoods have an invested interest in this community in so many different ways. Whether it be volunteering inside the schools or countless hours and years of coaching our future athletes in Dublin, our goal is helping foster these young relationships to create a community and a literal mental health safety net for our children now and for years to come. Thank you.
Amanda Harney.
My family and I have lived in the Brandon area of Dublin for the last 12 and a half years, and we have 2 children at Bailey who are currently projected to attend Roselle and Kaufman. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today, and I just wanted to take this time to explain the reasons why I support MAP 1. I was fortunate enough to graduate from a high school where I knew just about everyone in my class, and I'm still close with many of those classmates today. I know it's likely impossible for any student in any of the 3 Dublin high schools to know everyone in their graduating class, but choosing MAP 1 would allow my children, along with all of their Bailey peers, to know significantly more of their classmates when entering Kaufman than it would if they had to attend Scioto. Choosing MAP 1 would allow these students to maintain their friendships made at Bailey, friends that live within walkable and bikeable distances from their homes into high school, whereas MAP 3 would severely fracture these friendships. MAP 3 would cause students like my children who attend Bailey and then Roselle to know only 15% of their peers in their grade going into high school. That means they would not know 85% of their peers. As well, incoming 9th graders for this upcoming year would only know 3.7% of students in the entire school out of 1,800 students. Kaufman is not at capacity, and there's no reason to move Bailey and Roselle students out. High school is an incredibly difficult time as it is, and there is already a significant rise of anxiety, depression, and social isolation without the impact of having to make an entire new group of friends at the age of 15, many of whom are already have long-standing relationships from more consistent feeder patterns in closer neighborhoods. Can you imagine starting your freshman year in a classroom where you know no one, and there are already set groups of friends from other schools who've known each other since kindergarten? That would be very possible, even likely if MAP 3 prevails. Under MAP 3, the Bailey neighborhoods would be an island, surrounded by Jerome students to the north and Kaufman to the south. Even assuming they make new friend groups quickly, these relationships would likely be more virtual in nature due to the physical distances between their homes, further compounding the component of social isolation and lack of in-person contact our teens already experience. Unlike the majority of other students attending Scioto, there are no contiguous zones between the Bailey area and the other zones of Scioto, meaning our students cannot walk or bike to their friends' homes like they would be able to if attending Kaufman. There are, of course, multiple other benefits of MAP 1 compared to MAP 3. MAP 3 is projected to increase traffic by 175 to 200% during peak times for affected students in Bailey boundaries. MAP 3 would also cause students in the Bailey area to go from crossing 0 to 1 major roadways to 4 to 5, a huge safety concern, leading to more time to get to school and a likely increase in students who are tardy and miss important learning time. It will lead to more congested roadways and a higher risk of traffic accidents for all drivers in our area, not just students. MAP 1 will use less bus drivers than MAP 3 as well, positively contributing to both money and people resources. Another consideration is the greater time commute between Roselle and Scioto for families who have both middle and high school age students. This would put a much heavier burden on parents, like myself, compared to the commute between Roselle and Kaufman, especially for working parents, as I am. MAP 1 accounts for future growth. It supports the district's goal for a 6th middle school with a more direct and less fractured feeder pattern, and minimizes the risk for future disruption. In conclusion, MAP 1 is the only logical choice that best supports our community's growth, utilizes the most cost-effective options, plans for the future, and prioritizes our students' well-being. Thank you.
Stephanie Valentine.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Valentine. I am not related to Chris Valentine. My husband is Chris Valentine, but he is not on the school board, so thank you to everyone who's voted for my husband, but it's not him. I do live in Bristol Commons, which I also want to point out that I've heard personally from many people, and I've also read that he is protecting our neighborhood. If that is true, then why has our neighborhood been affected in every redistricting in the past 6 years? My kids were redistricted like twins. In 3rd grade to Bailey, then to Grizel, and in 8th grade, friends were pulled out from Grizel to Carr. I also have a graduate from Kaufman who never was affected by redistricting and can tell a big difference in her confidence with her peer groups and her stability through her schooling. She is still close to kids she went to kindergarten with in college. I am tired of hearing kids are resilient because I know my kids did not do well, and they really miss going to school with their friends at Pine Up Carr. I've been anxious to get away with them and go back to their car. It is very hard on the same group of kids to be socially and mentally go through redistricting multiple times. Plus, the feeder patterns in both elementary and middle school keep decreasing. My son and daughter will have one friend who went them to Sayota, and they will know a handful of kids. My daughter has gone through her yearbook, and she counts about 40 kids. I know the numbers are 60. She says, Mom, I think it's 40 of us coming. These kids are angry, and they're hurt. They don't feel like they matter. The district will bust them wherever it matters for the numbers. How to explain to these kids it is okay to drive by a high school and 4 other Kaufman neighbors who go to school farther away with only knowing 3% of the kids. MAP 1 is clearly better for proximity, continuous neighborhoods, transportation, and using natural boundaries as roads. MAP 3 is no way continuous neighborhoods. You have Llewellyn Farms carved out to Kaufman, and it drives right by historic Dublin that will then be going to Sayota. Neighborhoods east of River are carved out to Kaufman. Then BC with Bailey communities are carved out to drive by multiple Kaufman neighborhoods to Sayota. We have northwest neighborhoods that touch us to Jerome. My daughter goes to backyards through Crossgate to Front South going to Jerome. We have south of us, all are surrounded by Kaufman, and then the east is a river, so we are not touching any neighborhood going to Sayota. Transportation, it will triple our time to Sayota. The district will have more buses plus new drivers, which I've gone through with my older daughter going to high school with a bunch of new drivers, going to multiple different schools on the exact same roads. You will have kids going from right across from Jerome, down Brand to Kaufman. You'll have neighborhoods off Brand going to Kaufman Emerald, and then we'll be trying to go with those same kids but go off to Sayota. You'll also be having kids crisscrossing and passing other buses going to their schools. Our kids bike to after-school activities and summer sports. It is very easy and safe bike ride at Kaufman. We cross 0 major roads. We have a tunnel that takes us directly under Brand Road. MAP 3 will be much longer, plus busy roads and crossing 4 major intersections. It will be hard to make friends with kids who live farther away. They will not be able to ride bikes and scooters like they do now with classmates. Plus, once they start driving, it'll be more dangerous going to houses farther away. What about parents that need to pick up kids from Grizel and Sayota for after-school activities that end at the same time? Why wasn't Grizel listed as a traffic point in this traffic study? Our area only had 2 traffic points to look at, Bristol and Bailey. And then also, you mentioned in a meeting about 8th graders who take high school courses. The solution was, well, we'll just bus them to a closer high school. Again, you were telling the same kids they don't matter, and they'll bus for them wherever they can go to 2 different high schools. Please look at all 8 criteria objectively. Do not carve out multiple neighborhoods to make one area happy. Do not keep affecting the same kids over and over and bounce them around in multiple redistricting and several different feeder patterns will then end up starting high school with knowing 3% of kids. They will feel less valued, very isolated. Please put yourself in these students' footsteps and ask if you want this for your children.
Emily Berlin. I'm going to set this mic up here on the podium so that people can hear it. So that they can hear it over there. Forgive my phone. There's text messages flying while you're. Go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you for hosting this session. My name is Emily Berlin. I have 3 children in the district, currently a 5th grader, an 8th grader, and a junior in high school. I live in the Bristol Commons neighborhood, and I echo many of the points that my neighbors and friends have made regarding the impact to Bristol Commons. Bristol Commons has been impacted by redistricting multiple times over the last 6 years. As I said, I have a 5th grader, an 8th grader, and an 11th grader, which means my family has been impacted through every single redistricting over the last 6 years. The proposed map 3 results in a feeder pattern that layers on to the impact of being redistricted multiple times. Map 3 would result in our neighborhood entering high school knowing 6 peers. There are 6 8th graders in Bristol Commons that would enter high school knowing each other. If you look at the broader population, it's about 3.7%. And really that equates to entering high school, a formative time in their life, knowing very minimal people, or basically starting a brand new school. The impact on their mental health and social relationships will be immense. And this is exactly what happened to our neighborhood in an earlier redistricting process. And I can attest to the impact that it had on my children. I also want to touch on commutes and safety and bikeability. Our family, like many others in Bailey and in the district, is comprised of 2 working parents. My children's ability to participate in before and after school programs requires them to be able to walk or bike. Map 3 does not allow them to walk or bike, which will limit their options for enrichment and athletics. Map 3 creates safety risks due to the road crossings and an increase in commute time of over 200%. In summary, Bristol Commons and the well-being of our children has been continually disregarded as we have repeatedly been moved in extremely small cohorts. Dublin City Schools, thank you for listening to our concerns and reevaluating the impact on our neighborhood. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank John, Diana, and Chris for being here, and I want to thank the entire group for your participation. I mean, we all may have differences of opinion, but the fact that we're out here representing our neighborhood, I think is very important, and doing it in a respectful way, I think, is particularly important. I live in Waterford. I'm about probably 4/10 of a mile from Sells. We have 8 grandchildren, so I don't have any children or grandchildren. I don't have any children at school, obviously, but we have a lot of grandchildren. I focus really on 4 areas. There are 4 bridges across Scioto. There's the Tuttle, Bethel, there's the Bridge Street, there's an Emerald, there's a Glick. I think it's pretty evident by any study that the majority of the traffic congestion occurs on Bridge Street. If you take a look at the number of lights, and I live right there, we try to exit out onto Bridge Street many times during the day. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to get out safely. You've got a lot of lights there. You've got exit from 270, which goes down Bridge Street, crosses a bridge, and goes around the turnabout. So there's no doubt that of the 4, that by far is the worst area in terms of traffic congestion. I think that's pretty well known. The only thing I wanted to add to that, though, because I really wasn't planning on speaking. I signed up. I didn't think I was going to get called here. I thought that was for attendance. So I can't say I'm necessarily that prepared, except to say a couple things. There are several very large-scale projects planned for the Bridge Street area. And they're not proposed, they're approved. You know, one is a 5.37-acre lot on Dale Avenue, Bridge Street. 89 condos, 4-story office building, includes a restaurant. You have a new Synovius Energy headquarters, 50,000 square feet. You have Daimler's also developing Bridge North mixed-use development, 280 residential units, 150 room Hilton, a 60,000 street or a rental. And they're going to break ground in 2026. And you have an all-in Dublin, 75 units of affordable housing for adults with disabilities. And I'm not saying any of these things are bad. It's just the increased impact that we're going to have on 33 and 161 going through there. It's going to be even more dramatic. And you have Dublin City Drive, 75-unit multi-family building, and some more on Bright Road, some more residential development. Those are approved projects. Those aren't proposed, they're approved. In addition to that, there's a $325 million infrastructure improvement that's been approved by Dublin. It includes the old Bridge Street Bridge that's to begin in 2026. Okay? So there's going to be a lot of infrastructure, construction that will be taking place along that Bridge Street, that 33 to 61. That's going to take an already congested, terrible area to try to get through. And I invite anybody to sit down at High Street and 33 and just observe it. Almost any time during the day, but particularly around the times that schools are starting up and getting out. So I know the lake can be a problem, but it's not nearly what 33 is. Also, I've seen it back up on Tuttle and Bethel quite a bit. Emerald is really the only reasonable place to be crossing if you're going to be redistricting to kids to Sauda. In my own opinion, I think the Dublin City schools, just generally speaking, are good schools. I don't think this is about the quality of school. I think this is all about applying some reasonable standard with respect to the problems that some of these plans will create. So again, I wasn't planning on speaking. I do appreciate and respect those that have had input today, and I just think involvement is important. Thank you.
Spencer Wall?
Yeah, Wall.
Second?
Yeah. Thanks. Hello, my name is Spencer Wall. I want to first start by saying, I believe all three high schools here in Dublin are terrific educational opportunities for kids, and I kind of bemoan the fact that some of this has become a pit neighborhood against neighborhood. I think it's really unfortunate that that's happened. And I think it's pretty clear too that at this point we're unlikely to just choose, map 1 or map 3. I think it's clear that there's going to be some amendments to these maps, and so I think what I want to highlight are the things that I support in map 1 that should be considered as either map is approved going forward or used as a starting point. So I do believe that map 1 best aligns with the 8 criteria that the board has directed the superintendent to follow. It groups neighborhoods together in logical and coherent ways. So it hits proximity, it hits contiguous boundaries. It also does a really good job of using natural boundaries as the differentiators, right? So 270 and the side of the river are probably two of the most dominant physical boundaries in our community, and it does a really good job of using those as their points. It also plans for future growth as far as, we're told the reason for this redistricting is the immense population growth in the Jerome areas. And so considering that, while I realize that some of the scoring of the maps favored map 3 when it came to future growth, I think is a little bit misplaced, because when you look at the 10-year growth pattern, that we're probably likely to undercount more than overcount. It pushes Jerome directly into an 111% capacity in 10 years. It gets us right back where we are today. And so I think we need to really be looking at what that 10-year number looks like, much more than worrying about a 5-year number at one of the other high schools. So I also just want to say that I think draft 1 also effectively follows the district's criteria when it comes to socioeconomic, ethnic, and racial diversity. The criteria for the district says that maps should be inclusionary
and not negatively affect any school based on their decisions. And with this map, it increases by just 1% the free and reduced lunch numbers at one high school, and makes near minimum changes to the ethnic and racial diversity at all three high schools. So I think it pretty clearly that, that the map fits that criteria. It does not negatively affect any of the three high schools. So I just want to say, thank you to the superintendent, to our school board for listening to us today, and appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all. Thank you.
Sid Ali.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sid Ali. We live in Shannon Heights, and I'm a proud officer on our Shannon Heights Civic Association. We are on the south border of the city, and we like to consider ourselves the southernmost point, maybe not quite Key West, but our neighborhood actually dates back to 1986, and our kids have grown up in the Thomas Sells Kaufman schools, and our love for the schools really is deep. In fact, my wife worked on 2 of the last school levies to help Dublin City Schools. We firmly do believe in the mission and the vision and really the strategy of the district, but now we're questioning a few things, and really that's why I'm here. I want to make sure that I'm also representing Ryan, who graduated from Kaufman, served our country in the Army for 4 years and is now with his GI Bill in college. And Layla, who just graduated from Kaufman last year. Layla started her own nonprofit baking business called Crumbs for Kindness. In fact, Dr. Marshausen, she met you at a recent event, and I think she offered to cater a school board meeting or a staff meeting, and that offer still does stand. So I'm actually here on behalf of our neighbors, 320 households that feel that our voices are not completely being heard, especially we are in favor of map 3, but I actually do have a note from Layla. She is in college, and she wanted to share this with you, so I'm happy to read that. My name is Layla. I am a proud graduate of the Dublin Kaufman High School, where I graduated with high honors. I am currently pursuing a degree in political science with the goal of becoming a lawyer on a full-ride scholarship to a private out-of-state school. I share this background with you not to talk about myself, but to show you how deeply this district and its schools have shaped me and how committed I am to seeing them serve students fully. I want to address the proposed redistricting plan that would move students from my area to Scioto High School. I believe that this plan creates several significant concerns. First and most important is that Scioto does not currently provide equal educational opportunities compared to Kaufman or Jerome. Students in Dublin deserve to attend schools with equal resources, programs, and opportunities. Yet Scioto has fewer resources, fewer extracurricular offerings, and unfortunately carries a reputation among students of being the least desirable of the 3 schools. When we talk about equity in education, moving students into a school that is already disadvantaged is not the answer. Second, there are logistical concerns. The travel distance to Scioto is longer for many families, and because it requires crossing the river, biking to school is not a realistic option for students who might otherwise need to do so. This adds barriers to accessibility, especially for students without reliable transportation. If this redistricting goes forward, students will lose opportunities that they've worked hard to pursue, those that, for some, could affect their college pathways. And finally, and most touching, is the impact on diversity. This plan would concentrate the district's most ethnically diverse and lower income communities into one school. That is not redistricting, that is segregation. Instead of fostering diversity across all schools, it isolates those students, undermines the inclusive values that Dublin City Schools should stand for. I understand that redistricting is complex and no solution will make everyone happy, but solutions should not come at the cost of equality, opportunity, and fairness. I urge the board to consider this plan and seek alternatives that better balance enrollment without concentrating disadvantages on one group of students. Thank you for your time and your commitment to the future of our students.
Good morning. Thank you for hosting this. My name is Michael Ananiah, and I'm here today as a parent of 5 kids in the district, a taxpayer, and an engaged member of the Dublin community. Last week, I submitted formal requests to the superintendent and treasurer regarding the financial impact of the proposed redistricting plans. As of today, almost 2 weeks after the publicly stated deadline you provided, Dr. Marshausen, I received no acknowledgement or documentation around that. At the first redistricting meeting on September 29th, Superintendent Marshausen publicly committed to me to publish a comparative cost analysis of the draft maps by October 10th. He also acknowledged the district's intent to seek an additional levy and support from voters in the next 3 years. His commitment to transparency has not yet been fulfilled. The district has framed redistricting as a fiscally responsible alternative to building a fourth high school. I agree with that in terms of capital investment, but the long-term operational costs, transportation, staffing, and resource allocation are what will shape the district's budget and directly affect taxpayers for years to come. To date, no financial analysis has been provided to support or compare any of the operational impacts of the draft maps. And a member of the internal planning team confirmed that while financial analysis would be valuable, he said it had not been conducted and the district does not have the data to do so. I want to be clear, none of the proposed redistricting scenarios affect my kids' school assignment. In all of the draft maps, including the ones that were not even up for consideration, my kids remain at the same school. I raise these concerns not out of personal grievance, but because I believe the district has a responsibility to be transparent and fiscally accountable to the entire community. At this point, the lack of transparency leaves the public with two possible conclusions. Either the financial analysis does not exist, or the district is choosing not to share it. Neither scenario reflects well on the district's commitment for responsible stewardship or public trust. If the district's expecting an open-ended commitment from the community to fund future operations, then a reasonable expectation from the community is transparency, accountability, and responsible financial stewardship. I respectfully ask the superintendent and board to publish the promised financial impact report for each draft scenario, consider engaging an independent third-party auditor to validate the financial implications, and reaffirm your fiduciary duty to ensure that the decisions are being made transparently in the best interest of the community. This is not just about boundaries, it's about trust, and the community deserves to understand not only what changes are being proposed, but why and at what cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to hear everyone here today, especially in advance of the next board meeting. It's a good opportunity for you to hear from us. We know you've been receiving a ton of emails, feedback from every direction. I am a Bailey Elementary parent, former, I guess. I have a now 6th grader at Roselle, and I have a 10th grader at Kaufman. I was a former PTO president at Bailey, loved my time there. The community that we developed among families that the kids made is amazing. This is the first year that the middle school redistricting has taken effect, and 70% of Bailey is at Roselle and 30% is, 70% at Roselle and 30% are at Carr. And our hope obviously is that they will reunite with those peers. And as you've heard, that's probably one of the biggest things that this redistricting is about keeping our communities together. Dr. Marchhausen, you mentioned that Davis is 100% feeder into Scioto and how amazing that community is because they're 100% feeder pattern. If our kids are moved over to Scioto, which there's nothing wrong with Scioto, we are perfectly happy to go there from a education standpoint, peer standpoint. As far as equality, we know the courses, as you've mentioned, will be equitable, the offerings and opportunities there. However, our Bailey kids would only know 15% of the kids from their year. And to me, that's just not a big enough number. These kids moving, they will know less kids in high school than they knew from elementary school. And I feel like they should just be growing their friend group at this point as they go from elementary to middle to high school. So a few things that we haven't really touched on. I know we've talked a lot about the transportation issues, and that's huge. And there are a couple points that I want to make about the transportation study, and one is that there was only two points on the map that affected our community that were looked at and studied. However, a lot of the neighborhoods that are at risk of getting moved to Scioto are in fact almost a mile north of Bailey Elementary. And so in fact, that travel time will be much greater than, I think the study said, like 4 to 5 minutes. The impact will be much greater than that, especially with added traffic as the community continues to grow. There are 2 bridges across the way, and that is something else I wanted to mention is with the maps, when you look at them, you can't see the bridges on the map. It looks like when you look at map 1, 2, 3, whichever, you can't see the Glick Road Bridge. It looks almost as if you can get directly across the river, which you cannot. So I would like to ask that the draft maps include all bridges and access points across the river. I would also ask that you evaluate the full feeder patterns from elementary to middle to high school. What percentage of the high school is made up of each elementary school? So we know how kids are being affected. I would also like to point out some inconsistencies with the scorecard. I know that there are some people in our community that have done a lot of research about how the scores are being calculated. We feel that there are some inconsistencies there and that there's more weight given to some criteria than the other, potentially inadvertently, but we wanted to make sure to point out those inconsistencies with the scorecard. It is our feeling that map 1 is the best option, meets most of the 8 criteria. There is room for improvement though. We feel like there's a draft map 9, and there's been a lot of talk in my neighborhood about how draft 9 is very much like map 1, but there's some areas that are carved out by keeping Indian Run at Kaufman and moving Thomas over to Scioto. That would actually make the numbers and long-term utilization of the facilities and allow for future growth, and those numbers would be much better. So I just encourage you to take a closer look at map 9 and how that affects the district overall with the numbers for future growth. And yeah, thank you.
Bindu Siraj. Following Bindu, we'll have Alicia Pollard.
Good morning all, my name is Bindu Suraj, and thank you for letting me share my thoughts. So I have 2 kids, and my kids go to middle school and high school now, and both I and my husband, we work full time, and I think most of you do, but I just wanted to tell that out because I just want to tell how this redistricting has impacted and is going to impact us. We bought the house in Bristol Commons, thinking that the feeder pattern would be from Wyandotte to Carr to Kaufman. But with the last redistricting, it impacted both my kids. So we were moved from Wyandotte to Bailey and Carr to Grizzle. I'm here to say how map 1 helps my family and my Bristol Commons community. The first thing I want to point out is about the mental health impact, how both my kids were redistricted from the elementary and the middle school, they went through anxiety, stress, loneliness, sadness, frustration and confusion. Both of them, it was during the COVID time, so it added a lot more, and the academic pressure, overall well-being, I saw that happening to both my kids. We had to sit down with them every day after school. They would talk about, how they are in a group where they don't know many of their friends and the whole school environment is new to them. And also there are several studies which shows that frequent school environment changes impacts the overall well-being. So map 1 relieves the stress on students who have already been affected several times by redistricting. MAP 3 causes daily Grizzle students to know only 3.7% of their peers at Scioto. 66 8th graders will go to Scioto without knowing anyone. So this is a big impact on mental health. Now the second one is about the safer, shorter commute. So MAP 1, if we stay at Kaufman, it's around 1.8 miles for us. The walking distance is 41 minutes, biking is 11 minutes, and car ride is 4 minutes. MAP 3, which is moving us to Scioto, is a 6 miles. The walking is 1 hour 25 minutes, biking takes 30 minutes, and car ride is 15 minutes. So Kaufman is on my way to office. So that's how we plan buying the house. So my Kaufman kid is in both before and after school activities. I had to drive her most of the time than she utilizing the school bus. So MAP 1 helps us with the safer, shorter commute. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alicia Pauling, and I have a junior at Kaufman and an 8th grader at Sells. We live in Monaghan, a small neighborhood in South Dublin located right behind Thomas Elementary of just 80 homes, built in 1985 and led by a civic association, not an HOA. And I will not be talking about commuting times or traffic, even though I have a newly 16-year-old driver. Every educational decision, whether for an individual student or an entire district, must be rooted in objective, verifiable data. That expectation is not only good practice, it's the foundation of public trust. And that trust depends on the board's oversight to ensure that the data, scoring, and spending tied to this redistricting process are accurate, equitable, and fiscally responsible. I know for a fact, Dr. Marshausen, that you were having conversations last year indicating that Sells and Carr would both go to Scioto. I know that after Dr. Hoadley left, he made multiple comments to people that what had to have to be done was move Muirfield to Scioto. What changed? Neighborhoods not being broken up is not one of the criteria. In fact, in April webinar, you said that would likely happen. Yet it is now the justification for excluding areas. In the north, from consideration and shielding Muirfield, whose own website says it is a series of neighborhoods from consideration. What changed? In your April webinar, you promised traffic studies, updated enrollment projections, and housing studies that will be used to draw the maps. What changed? Why did you stop doing your due diligence in the spring? Why did you meet and provide maps to key communicators prior to any maps being released to the board and the public? Dublin has no South Dublin has no board representation and apparently no key communicators you find worthy of their opinion. Why? It's quoted in multiple news articles that you said 600 kids would be moved from Jerome, 300 to Kaufman, and 300 to Scioto. What changed? This is not about favoring a particular outcome. It is about ensuring that any map under consideration and the redraws made to it reflects accurate data, consistent standards, and equitable application of the district's own criteria. As acknowledged in the October 13th board meeting, mistakes have been made in the process, and the superintendent committed to corrective action. The board now has the opportunity to ensure that these corrective actions occur before further decisions are finalized. Historically, South Dublin's attendance zones were drawn with both continuity and proximity in mind. When Scioto opened in 1996, which was actually my senior year, its catchment area began north of Grand Road, extended to Shawnee Hills, and the neighborhoods east and west of Dublin Road without the Emerald Parkway Bridge, while South Dublin remained at Kaufman. Those boundary lines made logical sense then, and communities have not moved since. Only perceptions have changed. Back then, everyone was excited to go to Scioto. It was a brand new school, and the district had a plan to ensure its success by teachers and coaches from Dublin High School. There was a school spirit and culture that was shared by students in both schools. If Scioto was perceived as an equal school to Kaufman and Jerome, would there be this much pushback from so many communities? If a fourth high school was being built when neighborhoods upset about being moved continue to be upset and move to that school? Our advocacy is not about exclusion, it is about belonging, legacy, and data-driven fairness. We are not targeting other neighborhoods or seeking preferential treatment. South Dublin families are asking for consistency in the standards applied across all neighborhoods. The board's fiduciary role extends beyond approval. It includes oversight to ensure that every decision reflects accuracy, transparency, and fairness. We are not asking for special treatment. Again, we are asking for equal treatment grounded in data and not emotion.
And then Jess Prochaska.
You're doing great.
Thanks. I'm trying. So in some cases, my assistant out there wrote the phonetic spelling, and others she didn't. So, but she helped me out.
Hi, Rich Wicker of Welland Farms. I have a third grader and a fifth grader at Thomas Elementary. I don't like any of these maps. I don't like this redistricting. I think I speak for a lot of people in this room when I say we are tired of the goings-on in Plain City, 12 miles away from downtown Dublin, upending the lives of the people who actually live in Dublin. Now, having said that, I was really proud to see the recording of last Monday's meeting. A transparent, data-driven, objective evaluation of these maps was conducted. And you released the scores and the methodology for everyone to see. That was a level of transparency that I didn't expect, and I want to make sure I say thank you for all of that. Dr. M, you were honest and vulnerable about recent mistakes. You vowed to win back the trust of this community. You are within reach of doing just that. It's easy. Choose the map that clearly won based on your own planning committee's hard work. Map 3. Map 3 that includes Old Dublin. If I ever mention Map 3 today, I mean Map 3 plus Old Dublin. The time has come. We have to decide what we stand for. All of Columbus is watching. This redistricting has been on the local news at least twice already. I see the affiliate from Channel 10 here. Hello. Do we stand for facts, data, justice, common sense, balance, equality, objectivity, trust, safety, and reason? It's gotta be Map 3. Or do we stand for vibes, deference to wealth, self-interest, property value concerns, segregation, capriciousness, emotion? If so, go ahead and pick Map 1. Are we one Dublin or are we not? To all decision makers or influencers in this room, imagine a conversation with the community, with someone who lives in a neighboring town, with the news. Question, why did you pick Map 3? Well, we conducted a data-driven study with our internal planning team. We scored the maps objectively on 8 individual equally weighted criteria, and Map 3 comfortably scored the highest. Now imagine that same conversation. Why did you pick Map 1, which scored far lower and even finished dead last in 3 of the 8 categories, even lower than the maps everyone hated? Well, true about the scores, but this one neighborhood was real loud. They had signs. Map 3 made some wealthy areas sad. You really just had to be there. After the latest news feature on NBC, which let all of Columbus see us, promised to do a traffic study, only to admit that we never got around to it? Can DCS afford another embarrassing public misstep? Are we making decisions based on data, or are we doing it like a middle school talent show by applause? Tell me now. More facts. Fact, Map 3 moves the fewest amount of students. Fact, Map 3 splits fewer middle schools. Fact, Map 1 looks nice and pleasing to the eye. But a closer look would tell you, this map deliberately targets City of Columbus families for removal from Kaufman High. Yeah, we noticed. Safety fact, we're asking the wrong question about commutes. It's not, will my commute get worse if I'm reassigned to Scioto High? The question is, which West of River communities can most safely travel to Scioto? The safest, cleanest passage to Scioto High from West of River comes from any point north of the Dublin Road Emerald Parkway intersection. Map 3 does the best job of recognizing this. Fact, the Bridge Street Riverside Giant Roundabout has the most traffic collisions in town. Map 1 sends the most teenage drivers through this twice daily, 3 times at extracurriculars. Fact, the areas of the district inside of 270, west of River, have never attended a high school other than Kaufman High, going back to when it was called Dublin High. The areas north of Grand Road have in some cases attended all 3 over time. Fact, your field was clearly, obviously shielded from any possibility of crossing the river. Even though Glick Road is right there, even though that neighborhood attended Scioto High before, you cannot treat a 2,400 home behemoth of a neighborhood as one untouchable block. It's not fair. Fact, Map 1 deliberately puts all of the lowest performing schools into one building. How do the excellent teachers and administrators at Scioto High feel about Map 1? I've talked to them. They don't like it. Map 3 at least achieves some balance here. You're moving Scioto High in Map 1 not only to a higher percentage of free and reduced lunch, but you're adding gross students of 250 free and reduced lunch to that building. That's immoral, folks. Final fact, Map 3 scored the highest on your own criteria for the world to see. Follow data. And one last thing, if anyone here is from the city of Dublin, let DCS buy that Cardinal Health HQ and build a 4th high school. If it's still on the table, let it happen. Thank you.
And then Kristen Taylor will be after that.
Good morning, and thank you for having us all here today. I think we all know that this redistricting is causing a lot of anxiety and strong emotions throughout the community. I truly feel for any family that is affected. We all are here because we want what is best for our children and for our families and our community. However, in making this decision, I think we really need to try to do our best to take the emotion out of it and follow the data and the facts. You know it. I don't need to stand up here and ramble all the data to you. It's been said over and over again. By our own internal planning committee, Map 3 scored higher by 90 points, including utilization and future growth. Map 1 scored in the bottom half for 4 of the 8 criteria sets, including utilization and future growth. And we are here because of the growth. We will find ourselves in another painful redistricting process very soon if we do not account for that. Map 3 supports that. Future growth will also affecting the least amount of students, which was a statement made earlier by Mr. Cropper. We want to affect the least amount of students, and Map 3 does that. Proximity has been an argument for both sides, and it is an argument for both sides here. Someone will be going farther. I've heard a lot about students from the north side having the ability to bike to Kaufman and the inability to do so to Scioto. Please understand that that is the same argument for the students from the south, including Thomas and Indian Run. If we were to drive to Scioto from Bailey, it is 2.8 miles, taking just 9 minutes. However, for the students from Thomas, it is 5.2 miles, taking 16 minutes. Again, proximity is an argument that's been said over and over again, but it counts for both sides, and in fact, I think more so for the students from the south. I think it is also worthwhile to bring up the fact that Map 1 would negatively affect Scioto. it would make Scioto have 49% of the students there on free and reduced lunch. 49%, half of the student body. That is a disservice to those students, to those teachers, to those staff members. Dr. M and the board members, you are in a difficult position. And I urge you to remember that your job is to be objective and to remove the emotion as best as possible to make decisions that are based in fact and data that are the best for the district as a whole with equal treatment. Thank you.
Taylor? And then she leave?
She had to leave.
Okay. And then Defei Shin. Following Defei, we'll have Keith Sauer.
Good morning, my name is Defei Shen. I'm a resident in Bristol Commons, and I have two boys. One is a freshman in Kaufman, and one is 6th grade in Grizel. And I'm here today because I want to tell you MAP 1 is better than MAP 3, so the district should use MAP 1 as a base to make any necessary changes to develop the final map. And also I'm here to ask the district to keep Bailey Elementary neighborhood at Kaufman. So first I want to talk about why MAP 1 is better. I know many of you, the board members, have received email from a lot of us talking about the problem of the scoring system. I'm not going to details about that, but there's one thing I want to point out, very important thing. So for the scoring system, all 8 criteria are independent units and variables. In this case, they cannot be added together and then compare. This does not make any sense statistically. Instead, you should compare how many times each map ranked first for the 8 criteria. Now, if we trust the numbers, you look at the IPT scoring data, it looks like MAP 1 and MAP 2, they actually tied. But this is not true if you take a further study of those. MAP 3 actually is questionable to rank first for 3 criteria. Balancing school facility utilization, accounting for future growth, and feeding pattern. So if you look back the 3 mappers when Cropper's presented us with their data, it is very clear MAP 1 has a better number. They moved the most students out of Jerome for now, and they have a better long-term growth. And so my question is why these are objective factors, we're not using them. Instead, we put together an internal committee, and they sit together and make the decision, but not really look at those data. And then we kind of heard they score based on how they feel. So that's very subjective views, opinions. That's not objective factors. So why do we even spend money, hire the company, Cloppers, to develop those maps, to present all the data, if we're just listening to that committee providing how they feel, their subject views. And talking about the feeding pattern, how can MAP 3 even rank first when a very small group of Bailey elementary students were split into 3 high schools and isolated as an island? I know you say when you look at a registering high school, you only look at a middle school, but I have to talk about elementary school because they are all connected based on MAP 3. Very small group, it's like about 27-28% of Grizel students. They all came from Bailey Elementary. They will go to Scioto, a school basically, a school basically without anyone. They've gone to school before. And also this group of Grizel students, when they go from Bailey to Grizel, they probably cannot make any friends with anybody outside of that group because it doesn't make sense. Anybody who's not going to Scioto in the future going to Jerome, a different high school, why do they even spend time making friends? If they make friends, they lose friendship when they go to high school. And when you translate this 27-28% into the present 8th grade, it's only about 66 kids entering a building of 1,800. And with kids, they never know before. And how can you say this is a good feedback I have? Can you imagine if your kid is one of the 66? And also the district has a study showing a decline of students in our neighborhood in the future. So that means this number will be even smaller. And I also want to point out that I live in Bristol Commons, and especially Bristol Commons, we have been impacted multiple times. And the first time it happened during COVID, it was so hard. We were moved from Wyandotte, Carr to Grizel, to Bailey and Grizel. And it took my boys, when they first went to school, it's online school, they met a group of classmates, they have met online, and then when they finally go to school, they wear masks. It took them quite a few years to adjust to these new schools. And then last year, when this district do middle school redistrict, they moved a big chunk of, they moved a part of Bailey kids to Carr. So my younger son, he lost a lot of good buddies. And then we think, oh fine, when you go to Kaufman, you will meet them again. But now, if they register us to Scioto, he's not going to meet those friends again. So my husband and I, we moved a lot. We moved between states, we moved between countries. We totally understand being flexible, adjust to the changes. But this is too much. Such a short time, like about 5 years. We were impacted 5 times, Bristol Commons. And also, I think the district, when you look at a redistrict, when you do the feeding path, these are human beings. They're not just the numbers. You're moving them around and make the map look better. They are human beings. You have to think about their feeling, their well-being, their mental health. And some of you point out social economics. But we have also studied. We'd love to share that. We can send an email. I also have a couple of copies. One of the neighbors found some very good scientific support. When you use social economic as a factor to do risk district, it's not going to be successful. There are a lot of problems. And problems not only just to the students, but a problem to disrupt the community. And last, I want to touch, so far I talked about why Map 1 is better than Map 3, and why I asked you to keep the Bailey Elementary School students in Kaufman. And last thing I want to touch, why keep Bailey Elementary is also about transportation. I know everybody has a point, but for our Bailey Elementary neighborhood, especially Bristol Commons, our traveling time by car is like 200% time increase. And also, when our kids ride bicycle or walk, the crossing, like the main road crossing, increase from basically 0 to 5. So it's more dangerous. And also, I had my freshman son in Kaufman. During this whole summer, he played soccer for Kaufman, and he rode bikes to the practice. He came back. Oh, okay. Sorry. So I just want to give an example. Thank you.
I'll try to be quick. Good morning, everyone. My name is Heath Salva. I'm here to talk about 3 things. 1, I want to represent Dublin as a whole first. 2, I want to talk about draft 1 versus draft 3. And then 3, I'm here to actually represent Old Dublin. But first, to represent Dublin as a whole, I'm not exactly sure what this process is doing in terms of bringing value or any type of positive end state to this overall issue that's facing us. I see neighborhoods being torn against neighborhoods, communities against communities, families against families. So the positive benefits from this process I've yet to fully understand. I want to get into draft 1 versus draft 3. What we did within our community is we had to decouple all the PDF data, put it into a workbook, and then use the 8 defined criteria with the associated definitions to then do some comparative analysis between draft 1 and draft 3. What we found in doing this is that we also identified 15 to 20 sub-factors or subcategories to support each of those 8 categories based on that definition or any inferred subcategory that was listed throughout the reports. But what we found is that draft 3 versus draft 1 had an 88% positive ratio variance. And in seeing that, 6 of the 8 categories actually showed draft 3 having a more positive influence than draft 1, with 2 of the final remaining categories being equal. Sorry, Bailey. In my opinion, neither draft 1 nor draft 3 is viable. I think that should all be scrapped and we should start over, but apologies. And then we move into adding Old Dublin. If we add Old Dublin into draft 3, it actually increased 5 of the 7 criteria in a positive framework. So we've already identified that draft 3 is more viable than draft 1, an 88% positive ratio. If we add Old Dublin back in, it only increases each of those 5 of the 8 criteria even more. The only criteria we didn't have enough data for was the socioeconomic and diversity impact. But here's what I recommend. I recommend we stop this process right now and we start over. I think the board should integrate a phased construction approach for what the core issue is, and that's growth of DCS in our rural areas. If we do decide to move forward, I still recommend that we stop and we start over, look at different consulting firms, have more community involvement. But what we need to do, and I heard this did come out last Monday, so I apologize if I missed some of this, but we need to add more transparency. All the source data needs to be transparent. All the core data that you are using foundationally to evaluate your different criteria needs to be open source data. Second, we need to look at weighted criteria. Out of your 8 criteria, what is the most important to the root cause, the rural growth of DCS in Jerome areas? Second, what's important to the board? What's important to your constituents, to your residents? What's most important, what is important to the students? Let's have them be first and foremost. Second, you need to build 5 to 10 sub-criteria or sub-factors under each of your 8 criteria to actually drive your decision making. At this point, you'll be able to come back to the public and say, we've determined that map ABCD 1, 2, 3 is going to be the most viable for our entire group, for Dublin as a whole, because of X, Y, and Z. Without doing this, we still just bring across this approach of being very subjective, and there's just underlying things that no one in this room really knows about and does not understand how you're coming to certain decisions. So please stop this process now. Let's start over. We have time. We need to do this right, and everything will work out. All right? Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Lisa Miller. We live in Brandon, and my kids go to Bailey Elementary. The board has identified 8 criteria as important to student and district success, as well as the success of the redistricting process. Of these 8 criteria, 3 are really very high level and kind of strategic in nature, and they really need to be evaluated and implemented across the entire district in order to be meaningful. These are school utilization, diversity, and accounting for future growth. The remaining 5 criteria are really very operational, almost logistical in nature. And they speak to a student's day-to-day experience, and they're very tangible. How close is my school to my home? How long does it take me to get there? Is it safe for me to walk or ride my bike? How many friends do I know there? There are many areas in the district where 100% of these tangible criteria are met for one or both maps. And that's great, because that's a great student experience. But then there are areas where none or 0% of the criteria are met. In map 3, 264 9th through 12th grade students from the Bailey Elementary School neighborhoods are left out of all 5 of these criteria. So what really rises to the surface here is a vast disparity in student experience. It's inequitable to place the entirety of the burden on a small percentage of students who would then not receive the district-identified benefit of a single operational criteria being met. The district has said many times that compromise is needed to move forward, and that's absolutely right. But what I just described isn't a compromise, it's a sacrifice. Compromise implies give and take by all parties involved. Adopt Map 1 to avoid implementing this 100% failure rate for Bailey students. Or as you move forward, please identify neighborhoods that are impacted in this way, like Bailey's treatment in Map 3, and make improvements to the maps that correct this disparity. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Laura Nesbitt. I have 3 children. One just graduated from Kaufman. I have a Grizel middle schooler, and I have a Bailey Elementary child. So that's where I'm coming from in my personal perspective. I wish I knew more about the data, just like Lisa had mentioned. It is very difficult for our neighborhood to continue to foot the bill for the growth in the district. We are in the exact middle. Looking at any map, if you look at Dublin, our neighborhood is in the exact middle. So we've been pushed and we've been pulled and we've been here and we've been there. We've been through COVID with it, as DeFay had mentioned, And I think we're the majority of people in this room that care. I don't see anyone at Jerome at any of these meetings. Why is that? Because they have remained untouched. So we in this room, I think, want to go to Kaufman. Okay, that's our school, that's where we've been. As the people from the South have mentioned, they've been there for 50 years. They've been at Kaufman for 50 years. We have not. So that means that we need to get pushed and pulled again. I would say the opposite. I would say that we're tired of it. We've paid our price. We are tired of going in one door and out the other. Our children are the ones affected, and that's why it matters so much. Every single person in this room has a vested interest in taxpayer dollars being spent wisely. It makes me cringe to hear some of the comments today about let's start over. I agree, we didn't start in the right place and we may not be in the right place now, but taking all of the money that we just put into proper and 2 years and all of the elementary and middle school redistricting to now start completely over, to me makes me cringe, and it makes me wonder if we'll ever pass another levy in Dublin, and then what will happen? That's been my concern since map 2 and 3 came out. What I understood and what has happened in the past redistrictings when my children went from Wyandotte, a school I see from my house, to Bailey, which is another great elementary school, but more than twice as far. And then what I see from my middle schooler going from Carr to Grizel, which is even farther from Scioto, to now being asked to move to the high school is something that I just don't understand how that's even feasible for anyone in this room to say, that's okay, let's just keep pushing your kids around. When my kids go to the same school with the same kids for the past 50 years, but we don't want to change either. I know nobody wants to change. But you can't take the very middle, tiny part of Dublin called Bristol Commons that is all at Bailey and say, let's shove you over here because it just helps with socioeconomics and it helps with us staying in our 50-year district. If you want to tell me, MAP 3 supporters, that it's okay to treat my kids like that, I would love to hear why, other than your lies, damn lies, and statistics about some data that we don't even know where it came from, may be outdated and doesn't have any background for any of us. Thank you.
Hi, good morning everyone. My name is Sophia. I live in Westbury community, and our family is very close to Jerome. I'm sorry, I have to say I forgot my printed script at home. So that's allow me to express just my real feeling and let you know what's the real life here. So since the 3 maps came out the first day, we have watched those maps thousands of times. I believe that's what everybody here did in the past half month. My real feeling is map 1 is definitely the most, the best for us. Map 3 to me is like an incomprehensible existence. I don't know why there is a map 3, because it's against our common sense. So take my family as an example. We live very close to Jerome, so that's a walkable distance. But map 3 sent us to Kaufman. So that means my daughter have to, in the future, when she goes to high school, she has to either take the school bus or I drive her to in the morning or pick her up in the evening. That takes, if I do it, that takes at least half an hour. You know the traffic in the morning around schools. So that at least waste half an hour to 1 hour each day. So I'm a busy mom. I have work. So I have to ask for leave to come here. So I don't understand why such a map that wastes our time and that it exists. And I should say, just now, those who support MAP 3, they have very strong base of the statistics. But I have to say those numbers are so cold. So it doesn't reflect the real life. I want you to imagine what is the real life. So in the morning, our daughters have to get up early, 40 minutes to 1 hour early in the morning, and I'm stressful to call them get up from bed. So I'm stressful, the kids stressful, and they have to go to a long way, risk their safe to a farther school. So that doesn't make sense. That's against our common sense. So I just feel so depressed to see MAP 3. So if we have to choose one from the three, I definitely will choose one. That's our real life. So if you said we consider the numbers, that's so cruel to us, to the family like us. So I sincerely hope everybody think about the feelings of our families. We are all busy. Who can say here we are not busy? Everybody's busy. So don't waste our time. Don't waste the money for transportation. So just choose the most reasonable one. MAP 1. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you to everyone who came here today. On behalf of Chris and myself, the entire board, Dr. Marshausen, community input has been very important to us in this process. I know there's been a lot of reference to all the emails and the different ways that you all have to communicate with the board. We value that. We read everything. I'm going to apologize because we cannot respond to everything. It's just been so overwhelming, but nothing has gone unread. There's no factor that hasn't been considered. And so we just appreciate everyone taking the time today, coming here, giving very good sides to basically two arguments. So again, thank you, and we appreciate everyone today. Thank you.
You're welcome.